welcome to the next Lukozer retro game review video, and this one is a bit different to the usual videos that I've done. In this one we're going to be taking a look at the Commodore 128, and we're going to be checking out one of its hidden modes. Well, I say hidden, it's the machine was built to be able to do this, but yeah, among its various modes, we have obviously your standard 128 mode, which we have here. We have the Commodore 64 mode, which you can access either by typing the Go64 command or by just powering the thing up and holding down the Commodore key. There's also, as well as this regular 40 column mode, there's a Commodore 128 80 column mode, and there is also a fourth mode. The Commodore 128 can run CPM software. So in order to do that, it needed a little something when it was put together. So let's take a look at the Commodore 128's PCB. Okay, so this is the PCB of the Commodore 128. Now, okay, my image is cutting off a bit up the top here, but it's not cutting off the important bit, the bit that I'm here to show. And what we can see, hopefully my mouse cursor is, you can actually see it. This here, that is the good old SID chip. That's a 6581. These two big old chips here, one of those is the VIC-2. I'm pretty sure it's this. This is a revision 9 chip. The other one is a much earlier revision, so, well, yeah, it hasn't been revised as much, so I'm assuming that this one is the one that handles the display when you're running 80 column mode. But what we're really here to see is the processor. Despite the CPU being central processor unit, it's not very central at all, because it's over here. That is the 8502, and right next to it is this. That is a Z80B. So yeah, the Commodore 128 actually has two processors built into it. The 8502 that it uses pretty much all of the time, and the Z80 here, which is used when the 128 is running CPM mode. Right, so yeah, so the Commodore 128 has two processors. The 8502, which is actually always in use. I said nearly always. Yeah, it is always in use. But it also has a Z80, or specifically a Z80B. And yeah, the Z80B is used when the Commodore 128 is running CPM mode. CPM needs a Z80 processor. It cannot run on anything else. So Commodore decided rather late into the 128's development that they wanted native CPM support. So they decided to add the Z80 processor actually internally. I mean, you could run CPM software on a Commodore 64. There was a CPM cartridge for it, but with that, the cartridge itself contained a Z80 processor, and that was how it got around it. Now, anyone who used CPM a lot back in the day probably knows that the Commodore 128 was not a very good machine when it comes to running CPM software. It is quite slow. And indeed, the Commodore 64 was even slower. So, although it can run CPM software, it's not the best machine, to actually try or actually use CPM seriously. At least I don't think it is. So I've got the disk image already inserted, and if you had a 1571 disk drive, you could basically just insert the disk, power the your 128 up, and it would automatically start loading from the disk and booting into CPM mode that way. If you had 1541, you couldn't do that. You had to boot up the computer, insert the drive, type in the boot command, and then we wait for CPM to start up. Okay, and there we are. So this is CPM 3.0 on Commodore 128. This is, let's say, I'm obviously running an emulator. The emulator, like I say, has been set up with a 1571 disk drive, which is a lot faster than a 1541. So yeah, it is just a lot quicker loading just about anything. I do think that the emulator is running it a little bit fast, though. I think if you actually had Commodore, an actual Commodore 128 and a 1571 disk drive, it wouldn't be quite as quick as it is here, but it is still noticeably faster than if you had a 1541 drive. So CPM is, I am by no means an expert on CPM, not at all. But CPM is, it's a bit like a sort of forerunner of what became like CLI on the Amiga or MS-DOS. It's, it is, type in here, so we've got all of the rather familiar looking MS-DOS type display and MS-DOS functions and everything else. But CPM wasn't really designed to be used on the 40 column display. A lot of the time words get cut off to one side and everything else, and it just, it doesn't look too good. It certainly doesn't help that you can't read a great deal. So what we shall do is first of all enable the 80 column display, and then we shall reset. So now we're using 80 column, and there we are. Because I've got the 1571 drive, or the emulator set up for 1571 drive, as soon as we've reset, the disk was already in there, so it straight away boots into CPM. Now if I just minimize this again, well, not minimize it, but put it in the small window, you can see that it is actually using both displays. The VIC-2 chip, actually I think the VIC-2 chip is actually disabled during this. It is just using, it's just displaying the two different modes. If we take a look at the directory here, Right, so among the commands here is a command screen 40, and if we set it so that screen 40 is off, and there we go, screen 40, the 40 column mode has now been switched off. It's no longer outputting to that, and that will save about 10% on your processor speed, because the Z80 chip, it's clocked at 4 megahertz, which is the same speed that the Z80 in ZX Spectrum is clocked at. But even though it is clocked at that, it doesn't actually run or actually process any commands at that speed, because the big problem with the Z80 on the Commodore 128 is that it's never actually used entirely on its own. I mean, the Commodore 128 is an 8502 based computer, so no matter what it is you're doing, it's all going through the 8502 CPU. So when you're running CPM, so let's issue a command. So we'll do the standard directory command. The command is entered and processed through the 8502, and then from there it gets passed on to the Z80. The Z80 then carries out the CPN command, and then passes it back to the 8502. And then from the 8502, the output actually finally appears, and that means that the Z80 is running on the same bus and therefore at the same bus speed as the 8502. So even though the Z80 is clocked at 4 megahertz, because the 8502 is clocked at 2 megahertz at best, your Z80 is effectively forced to run at that kind of speed. So even though it is clocked at 4 megahertz, it effectively is only actually running at 2 megahertz. And that is the main reason why people who used CPM back in the day did not rate the Commodore 128 as a CPM a machine for running CPM applications. CPM was mostly business applications, spreadsheets, databases, word processors and the like. There were also programming language compilers. Two that particularly interest me are Pascal and Fortran. But that's not what this is about, because there were actually some game there were some games for CPM. So if we flip the disk image to that and now do a directory, and we have Zork 2 here. So all three of the Zork games, the Novacom, Infocom, Novacom, one of those two anyway. These were text-based adventure games, and all three of the Zork games were available for CPM. I have the disk images for all three. Unfortunately, the first Zork doesn't seem to work, but I have tested Zork 2 and that did work, so we'll just get that to load up. I've kept True Drive emulation on because I wanted to show the actual speed. So here we are, Infocom, there we go. And there we are. So this is Zork 2 now. Inside the barrow. You are inside an ancient barrow hidden deep within a dark forest. The barrow opens into a narrow tunnel at its southern end. You can see a faint glow at the far end. Strangely familiar brass lantern is lying on the ground. A sword of elvish workmanship is on the ground. Alright, so if we pick up sword, there we go, and pick up lantern, you can really see how slow this is on. If you were playing Zork 2 on like a 64 or a Spectrum, these would be, processed much quicker. If we go south, narrow tunnel. You are standing at the southern end of a narrow tunnel where it opens into a wide cavern. The cavern is dimly illuminated by phosphorescent mosses clinging to its high ceiling. A deep ravine winds through the cavern with a small stream at the bottom. The walls of the ravine are steep and crumbly. A footbridge crosses the ravine to the south. So, let's see what happens if we go south. Footbridge. You are standing on a crude but sturdy wooden footbridge crossing a deep ravine. The path runs north and south from here. If I go north, that just takes me back to where I came from, so carry on south. The Great Cavern. This is the centre of the Great Cavern, carved out of the limestone. Stalactites and stalagmites of many sizes are everywhere. The room glows with dim light provided by phosphorescent moss. Does like its phosphorescent moss, this one. And weird shadows move all around you. A narrow path winds southwest among the stalagmites, and another leads northeast. So anyway, I mean, you get the idea. It's your standard text adventure. So there are text adventure games available for CPM. And you would think that, I mean, since CPM on the 128, it disables the SID chip, it disables the VIC2 chip, so there's no hardware sound, there's no sound at all. There's no hardware sprites or scrolling or anything like that. So you might think, well, this is it as far as gaming on, on a 128 in CPM actually goes. But no, there is actually at least one arcade. I use the term advisedly. There is at least one arcade game available. So if we reset this, actually no, we'll flip the disk image to, yes, this one here. Right, and now we'll just quickly reset. Now this disk image, it has the CPM boot option there, although this isn't the same CPM mode that I was running earlier. In fact, yeah, the 40 column display is back up and running again. But if we do a directory here, we'll see that we have Tron. Yeah, this is a CPM game of Tron. Honest. Well, let's run it. Just let this load up. Here we go. Tron by Henning and Torsten Crack. I'm sure it's not just Torsten Crack. But anyway, yeah, so here we are. Danish, I'm guessing. Right, so moving obstacle YN. Well, we'll say no for the moment. Right, now this is 2-player only. So the player on the right has to use the numeric keypad. 8 and 2 up and down, 4 and 6 left and right, which is a bit annoying because for some reason the 2 on the keypad doesn't register when I press it at all. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Well, it doesn't register when I'm running this. I mean, it works normally, but so we're going to have to be player 1. Fuck, I really hate these keys. So ES, D and X. Right. So Tron. I'll tell you now, it's based on the light cycles sequence from the film. So well, here we go. Yeah. Isn't that fantastic? We are talking sub Cascade cassette 50 levels, but I mean, like I say, CPM mode, well, yeah, CPM gaming was never intended to, you know, be running on a CPM machine. Let's have a go at programming them or controlling them both. This should be good. Oh, fucking yeah, I can't fucking do this. Yeah, if I try, yeah, see, I'm pressing 2 on the keypad to move down and it just will not do it. But a lot of the keys on the keypad don't seem to respond. So, yeah. But this is it, no sound. Well, technically there are graphics, but I mean, it's, you know, it's... it's lines, white lines, that's it. So yeah, we'll get out of that. Let's let's just get something interesting on screen anyway. So yeah, gaming on CPM, it can be done, but it is really not worth it at all. So well, there we are. That is CPM on the Commodore 128. It has its uses, but there were people back in the day who, you know, used CPM a hell of a lot, but they probably didn't do so on a Commodore 128. Yeah, it was almost a bit of an afterthought from Commodore when they added it. So it did come along quite late in the development of the Commodore 128. And yeah, it's I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a novelty. I'm sure, you know, there's more to it than that, but the 128 really was not a machine that you were going to use if you were serious about actually using CPM at all. This just no. But there we are. So it's a very quick demonstration of CPM mode. Like I say, I am no expert of it or on it, and I've pretty much exhausted everything I know about the thing. But I thought I'd show that there is another mode that the Commodore 128 runs in, and you can game on it, if you can call it gaming, and yeah, it is what it is. If you're a gamer, you won't really want to be going anywhere near this. That Tron game, there's stuff like that on cassette 50 for fuck's sake. And Zork, well, you can play Zork on your 64, your 128, your Spectrum, your Amstrad, your whatevers, and you do not need to be running any of those in CPM mode in order to actually play the thing, and it would be a lot faster if you weren't playing it in the CPM mode. So yes, you can play games on a Commodore 128 running CPM, but you don't want to. So that brings this rather short demonstration to an end. There's no review scores or anything for the games. This is, I say, it's just a demonstration. And yeah, I will be back with the next review, which will see me going back to the Amiga for an arcade conversion. Yeah, it always bodes well. Arcade conversions were always great for the Amiga, weren't they? Yes. Anyway, so that's that one. Well, that's this one done, and we'll see you on the next one.